Mimicry. What is mimicry? René Girard talks about mimicry and so-called mimetic desire. Does he know what he's talking about? He's got a point. Is it a good one? How does this relate to exemplification? Do you really know what you're up to? Let's dive in. So I want people to understand that the world is layered, and that's going to matter for mimicry because you mimic different things in different ways based on what layer they're at. So, for example, you can do things that everyone can see, like maybe have a YouTube channel, and you have to treat that a certain way. And if other people see you doing that, they may also want to have their own YouTube channel. This may not be good, by the way, but it's the way it is. There's another layer where you're doing things in private. In other words, to a private audience, there's some sort of filtering for that. Maybe you know what the audience is. Maybe it's just people who walk into the comedy club in New York City. Doesn't matter, right? And there's another layer, which is doing things in private for yourself. There are variations on this. Obviously, there's the family layer, the family and friends layer, the people you've selected, for example, whether you know them or not, right? There's groups where you know everybody in the group, groups where you don't know everybody in the group. And there's all sorts of public layers. There's political, right? There's economic. There's all sorts of ways in which we're embedded in these layers. Now, when you're in a layer or when you're looking up at a layer, say a guy with a YouTube channel, you go, oh, I want to be like him. But you don't have a YouTube channel. So he's in some ways above you or ahead of you. Above is better, by the way. Ahead is sort of flat. So having those layers and acting differently based on the audience, right? No audience, maybe you do things that, you wouldn't do any other time. Hopefully, that's a good thing. That helps to strengthen identity, right? Part of my strong identity is wrapped up in the things I do in private, alone by myself, or alone in nature. Part of my identity is wrapped up in how my family treats me and how I treat them, right? Part of my identity is on one of my 2 YouTube channels, because I have a YouTube channel, it's just my name, where I just rant like a lunatic and generally adjust my equipment so that I can do these videos. And these are different audiences, and I convey slightly different personas in each audience. Those are identities. And what I'm mimicking matters very much on my ideal vision for what I'm doing. This also helps everybody else to identify you. Oh, are you a YouTuber or a software engineer or a grill master or a neighbor or a cousin, right? These are all different identities that we have. And that level of mimicry and exemplification matters. So you're exemplifying for the people below you or around you, and you are looking to exemplars to mimic them for your force in the world, basically, to be in the world. And this just highlights the fact, and this is why identity is important, that when you're in the world, and you're watching this, you're definitely in the world, just in case that's confusing to anybody, you are seen by the world, and that matters, right? Someone at Google knows what you're watching, somebody at Rumble, whatever, right? People know what you're watching. And just the fact that you're watching, and then you go off and talk to somebody about mimicry or exemplification or identity, that's influenced by you watching this video. So that matters because it affects the world. You can sort of hide from the world to some extent, we'll say, for a short period of time at a great cost, right? But it's easier not to do that, and it's better for the world that you participate, particularly deliberately and in a fashion that suits you, right? I'm not going to be a great basketball forward. That's not going to happen. the world would not be better if I got into the NBA and tried to play forward in basketball. It wouldn't work, right? And so you have to know that, right? Just because you want to be a great basketball player or a great football player or a great baseball player doesn't mean you're going to be able to, right? And or a great artist, right? Or a great musician, whatever it is, you want to be in the right place in the world because it matters. And you can make the argument that sometimes you need to be alone in the world, and I agree, but it turns out that the best way to do that is when you're working, actually, right? Or maybe just taking a walk in nature, but that's the best way to do it, is to be physically doing something, not locked in a video game or with a VR headset on or reading a book. These are actually not good ways to be alone with yourself because they lack proper participation. And when you're moving, you're grounded. When you're not moving, you're less grounded, much less grounded, probably not grounded at all. So these are important. Maybe you're doing the dishes, maybe you're sweeping a floor, whatever. Also good for your anxiety. That's the time to think about, we'll say, deep issues, right? Philosophical or otherwise. And there's little need to, set up time for contemplation because you can do that while you're doing the dishes, sweeping the floor, whatever is good for you, right? Maybe practicing some sports. If you actually do sports or martial arts or anything physical, you realize practice. So since people are in the world and they're seeing where you are in the world and what you're doing and what you pay attention to matters, right? It matters not just to you, but it matters to the people that can see you, the audience, which, most people don't think about much. I have a YouTube channel. I think about audience constantly. It's the big problem to crack on YouTube. What's the audience? Can you find them? Can you attract them? Can you keep their attention? Right? It's a big pool. How much of that pool do I really want? Right? I don't want trolls. That's a big bad audience, right? But you can get them really easily. So these things matter. And what kind of message am I sending to the audience that I intend to talk to? I don't talk to people like monks. Like I don't talk to monks on purpose. I'm not delivering my messages for monks. I don't think they need these messages. They probably wouldn't find anything interesting here or anything to disagree with or agree with in particular. They'd just probably be puzzled. Might be the same for pastors. Pastors probably don't find anything on this channel that can help them unless they're looking to help the audience that I'm looking to help. That's a different issue. So knowing that is important. And knowing what signals you're sending out and how they might be interpreted by unintended audience, in the case of YouTube, is important. And so I try to be careful with that. So you're somewhere in the world, you're seen by the world, and you have to pay attention to that fact, to what signals you're sending out, and how they might be read by the people that might see them. Not the people you want to see them, the people that might see them. And sure, you can say, look, you need to glance into the darkness and know what to avoid in life and not just go towards, the things that appeal to your audience. For example, that's people refer to that as audience capture. I get that, but you don't want to linger on those things, right? You want to pay attention to the things that are good, that are going to get you towards your goals, or hopefully with the ultimate telos of the good. And the thing is, what you see shapes you in unconscious ways or subconscious ways, right? Which you cannot fully realize consciously ever. Just not on the table, never going to happen. There's nothing that can be done. And this is why and where therapy, as in psychology, can help you, right? An outside perspective, not reading psychology and understanding psychology texts. That's useless, actually. An outside perspective can see what you cannot, by definition, right? It can't see my face without looking in a mirror. A mirror provides me an outside perspective, but I can't see me in a mirror the way other people see me. It's not possible because I'm still limited by my senses and the things that I normally pay attention to, which is usually not faces in any reasonable detail. And therapy can help you out of that, right? I argue that there's better ways to get these external perspectives than to pay somebody, right? And that's true for most people, family, friends, having a best friend, things like that. Much more effective than therapy. Even therapists know this. It's in their literature. No, really. And this is all part of mimicry and exemplification. A therapist can tell you, oh, you're mimicking this pattern from your traumatic past. Oh, right. And that's why you're having a problem. And then there are ways to resolve that. Hopefully a best friend can do that for you too, or maybe a family member or whatever. But that's why it's important what you pay attention to and what signals you're sending out at the same time. And because you're in the world, and because these things matter, you cannot let people do whatever they want. Because you can't do things that don't impact others. In fact, you can't do things that don't hurt other people. It's not actually possible. Everything you do is going to be a disappointment to someone, somewhere, for some reason. And they're going to see you eventually. Maybe not when you do it, but they're going to see it. It's like the alcoholic that sneaks a drink. It's like, well, but at some point you're going to get drunk and people are going to know that you're drunk. And so the fact that you got away with sneaking the drink in the afternoon didn't really help much. Now, did it? But people don't think that way. They're very short-term thinkers. So really everything you do can be seen, or the direct results can be seen eventually by other people. And it matters to everyone else because they're affected by those things. And that's because it turns out that we all happen to be sort of co-located, if you will, in the same created order together. You could say we're stuck on the same blue marble in space if you wanted to be really silly about it. Also true. And this is just a limitation, right? It's a constraint of the world which was here, it was present before you, into which you were born and where you now exist. So you're not getting around that. It already happened to you. And so, that's good to know. Okay, well, what I do matters. I'm seen by people. I need to pay attention to who sees me, do what, and right, which is all about limiting those layers. So maybe I should do this in private, alone by myself. Maybe, right? A good example of this is nudist colonies are bad. They're bad for children, they're bad for adults, they're just bad, right? If you're going to be naked by yourself, for the most part. Maybe there's an exception or two in there for, making babies, right? Or maybe there's an exception for cleaning babies. The exceptions all seem to involve babies. Yes. So, and very limited interactions. Like, you should not run around outside naked. You just shouldn't do that. Is this going to happen occasionally? Will the 3-year-old escape? And yeah, that's going to happen. It's not good though. Right? We don't want to do things like that. Right. I have two uncles who were unfortunately drug addicts who died of their drug addictions. Would not do drugs in front of me of any kind. Wouldn't even smoke pot near me. I knew they smoked pot and did heroin. I knew this. This is not a secret to anybody in the family. But it was important to them that I never saw them doing that, or any of my cousins either. No one ever saw them doing that, except their drug friends, which they were perfectly, that there was the flaw in their plan. But that was a good thing, right? Ultimately, if they were going to harm themselves, they should do it without other people watching, unless those other people are, of a certain type, we'll say, or assisting or comrades of some kind. This is really important, and people miss this point. Mimicry matters. You're going to mimic the things you see in the world to some extent. And there's some things you'll flat out rebel against, at least for a long time. But ultimately, mimicry is not good. I mean, the problem with rebelling against is you'll probably rebel against the wrong thing and become, we'll say too prudish or too stodgy or too much against something that is part of the world and needs to be integrated, right? And so you don't want to try to exclude things. They did that in the United States with alcohol. It didn't work, right? You don't want to do things like that. You don't want to become too afraid of things. And so it matters what you see in the world. It's better that the drunk tries to hide their drunkenness. Yeah, it is. Maybe it doesn't work, but it's better that they at least try, because you'll sense the trying too. Exemplification is automatic. It's the result of mimicry. We see this person, we mimic them. They're the exemplar for that behavior. It's subconscious and it's required. All of this talk about education and learning, almost all of that is actually mimicry. That's what's actually happening. Other things are happening too, but the primary force is mimicry. And that's what forms you. You are formed by the exemplification of the adults around you when you're a child. Period. Full stop. Again, you can rebel against that, and maybe you have to rebel against some of it, for sure, because parents don't get everything right. It's almost like they're regular people or something, and just the way it is. But you should do that carefully and thoughtfully when you can. And maybe you need help with that. Maybe you need a therapist, although I still don't recommend therapists. There's got to be a better way to do that than therapy. So most of our so-called learning happens this way. We see these patterns in the world and we mimic them, we copy them without being aware of it at all consciously. It doesn't even occur to us. Just 100%. And some of those patterns are awesome. Some of those patterns are only good, or maybe they're just neutral, but for a short time and then they turn bad, right? And the reason for caution about mimicry in particular is simple enough. Only a distributed cognition through time can resolve what patterns do not degrade, when to exit a pattern, right? Like when maybe you're following the pattern of a concert pianist and you're just never going to be that, right? You're never going to be that. And you come to the end of your ability to mimic that pattern, and then you need to exit that pattern, right? Or maybe you're following the path down the comedians and you realize you're surrounded by a bunch of drunken drug addicts and you're like, oh, I have to exit. I could be a good comedian, but I have to exit this pattern because it's just too much degradation here and I can't resist it. Because some people can't. Some people can. Some people can't. I can go to parties with people who drink. I don't drink. It's really not a problem. Other people, they can't be around alcohol, or they'll fall right back into their alcoholic ways. It's just the way it is. And how that's true for you and it's different for everybody. That's why you need help. And this distributed cognition allows you to resolve those patterns. It seems tyrannical, maybe. It's not tyrannical at all, by the way. It's mediated. It's a mediated participation, and mediated participations are not tyrannical. Only unmediated participations are tyrannical. And so which patterns you should follow, why you should follow them. After all, a single person doesn't know what they should or shouldn't adopt, right? And which things they should avoid, because a single person can't see the fullness of the pattern. It's, not just the water you swim in. You haven't lived your whole life yet. So you don't know how these things are going to work out. Should you become a monk? Should you become a priest? Should you become the world's greatest software engineer and be alone for the rest of your life? Is wealth good for you? Wealth isn't good for everybody, right? And so the consequences of your actions can't be known to you at all, period. Even if you could sense the water you swim in, it wouldn't help you. And so the best bet, imperfect though it may be, because it just turns out that we're people and people are imperfect or something, and it seems to be true of all of them for some weird reason, or at least almost all of them, you got to go with older and wiser people, right? You got to ask them their opinions and the things they've passed down. And maybe they wrote a book. Okay. Some of it's in books. Some of it's in old stories told by relatives. That's probably more relevant to you. Some of it's in stories about heroes or stories about great men, or maybe coming from the great men or the potential great men of our time. Jordan B. Peterson, of course, always springs to mind. And still others, people can give you personalized advice and opinions because they know you directly. And this is actually the worst and least effective form, from what I can tell. People are a lot more influenced by stories, and maybe that's a good thing. Not if they're reading romance novels or mystery novels or something pointless, but That might be one of our problems. Everybody, trying to solve this with the read old books trick. I don't think that's going to work. Those books are old. They've been here all along. Having people around that you can look up to and exemplify at least part of their life. Maybe your uncle who smokes cigars. You don't want to do this cigar smoking thing, but the rest of it, not so bad. Maybe your uncle's a master mechanic and a heroin addict. And, the mechanic part, good. The hard work, good. The heroin, yeah, not so good, right? And because people are imperfect, but they can still give you good ideas, right? And good advice. And I think that loss is part of the revival in this idea of good storytelling in our current culture, right? Read old books. What we need are better stories. We need a story that binds us. We need a mythos for the Western world, right? This is all that sense of losing, we'll say, good advice from the past systems that sort of, made us, but are now missing to us for whatever reason. Usually it's our own fault. It's our own stubbornness. Trying to be individuals, and that's impossible. And, it's easier to just participate and cooperate than it is to oppose all the time or critique or whatever. And so this leads me to, what does all this mean? What does this talk about mimicry and exemplification boil down to? Well, aside from watching what you do and who might be seeing that and how that might be viewed even in the future, because I've got my YouTube channel, everything's like, how's this going to be viewed in 5 years? I better figure that out. And, I tried. I don't know how good a job I did. You can tell me in the comments below, but I tried. Channel's 5 years old. Go look at the oldest videos. Tell me how I did. You can also watch who people pay attention to and who they pay less attention to and more attention to, more importantly. They pay a lot of attention to Fox News, CNN, any of the mainstream media, in fact, or do they pay attention to Mr. Beast? Or they pay attention to the gamer channels? And what kind of YouTube personalities do they watch? Or Twitch personalities do they watch? And who are those people? And why don't they watch these other people they're aware of? Does it matter that you watch, we'll say, too much Andrew Wilson and we'll say not enough Jordan Peterson? That might matter a lot. And don't try to understand why. Who cares? It's not even important, right? Just react to what you see happening. If someone's out there and they're promoting, a political candidate, right? Figure out they're promoting this political candidate. That's a bad thing from my perspective, right? To be fair, it's from your perspective. It may not be a bad thing ultimately. Who knows if you're right or wrong? Doesn't matter. Okay, well, I won't listen to that person. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Maybe you shouldn't, right? Oh, this person talks about Destiny a lot. And Destiny's a pretty famous streamer guy. Right, but he's a moral degenerate and a scumbag. So, well, why aren't they putting forth Andrew Wilson, who's honest about all his vices, has them out there, for you to engage with or not engage with, and is a really good debater who doesn't actually lie to you like Destiny does? Yeah, it's a good question. Why would you pick one of these over the other? And what does that say about you? Whose channels are you promoting the most, and whose channels are you promoting the least? Well, that might say a lot about how you think and what you're watching. And maybe I don't want to get captured in that web because maybe your life kind of sucks and maybe you'll shoot somebody or something because there's a pattern there. And it's a pretty clear one at this point. I know we're still resisting, but there's a pattern there. It's a very visible, very easy to spot pattern. Not everybody falls into the worst part of the pattern, we'll say, but everyone in the pattern has the potential to do that. So maybe no. Got to be careful about these things. You've got to invoke distributed cognition, right? i.e., ask your friends, find a priest, consult old people that you know, or meet some new ones and ask them, what about your life? What do you think about this? How did you find your first girlfriend? Whatever. Join or start a book club or a meetup group, maybe around Jordan Peterson's work or someone else you admire, someone else you can exemplify who has a relatively good life, illnesses aside in his case. Seek to understand the lessons handed down that are at least 200 years old. It's important. Those things have lasted for a reason. Lots of people have been saying lots of things over the past 1,000 or 2,000 years, and almost all of it didn't make it. Didn't make it. We don't know what they were saying. Why? Because it's bad advice. So it didn't get carried through the ages. So the advice that has been carried through the ages, I mean, I'm sure pieces of bad advice are going to slip through. Obviously, it's an imperfect world made up of imperfect people, right? But for the most part, stuff that's really, really old is probably really, really right and doesn't need to be changed. Certainly not by us. What the hell do we know? We just got here. We didn't live a full life yet. Who are we to critique? What is it that you exemplify? What patterns are you mimicking? What people are you mimicking? These are all important questions that you should pay attention to for yourself and with others. You should look at other people. What are they telling people to do? Who are they listening to? What patterns are they mimicking that maybe they don't even know about? That's how you can find true hypocrisy. Not all cases that you think of hypocrisy are actually hypocrisy. Like the king is allowed to do things that the peasants aren't allowed to do for a reason. For example, tell you how the kingdom's supposed to run by definition. And so it's not hypocrisy for him to do it when you can't. That's called the way structure and hierarchy works. But who's the king looking up to? Is he inventing a new religion? Or looking at the heroes of old? What stories is he telling? And what stories is he trying to ban? And don't be thinking banning things is bad, because you got to ban bad stories, obviously. You don't want children mimicking bad patterns or bad heroes. You just don't want that. So hopefully this gives you a sense for the importance of mimicry, because you're picking an exemplar, or maybe exemplars are in front of you, whether you want to pick them or not. And you have very little choice. There's a whole series of commercials about turning into your parents. Yeah, who do you think that is? Right. You see a pattern of somebody in their 30s or 40s or 50s, right? When you approach that age, you're in that pattern. You become your parents. That's true. That's how it happens. You're a child. You see this person acting this way at that age. You're naturally going to gravitate towards it. Is it going to work 100% of the time for everybody? No. But it's going to work most of the time for most people. Super important. So, with that in mind, pay close attention. You'll learn something about the people around you when you look at what they're mimicking, when you talk to them about who they exemplify, about what they are looking up to, or what they're looking across at, and what signals they're willing to send to people. If you're willing to tell people war is okay, or you need to fight, or opposition is good, or opponent processing, or something foolish like that, that might not be a good person. Might be team bad on that one. So you got to pay close attention to these things, right? Find the people that are good to cooperate with, and do the cooperative processing with the distributed cognitions available to you. Exemplify the correct identity for where you're at and what audience you are in front of at the time. That will all help you to be stable and grounded over time. And that's why I like to end my videos by thanking you for your time, energy, and attention.